Hello, this is a Murakami Minute presented by the Drunken Pen Writing Podcast. I'm your host, Caleb James. With me, as always, Mr. Spencer Church.
Hello.
We have finally got to the end of this book, which it seems like it was, because we have, 8 episodes on this, so it seems like it's been drug out, but we really, could have read this in an hour. It's a very small collection. If you didn't check out last episode, I would just like to reiterate that 7 of these stories in here were pre-published, so the only original story in this collection is first person singular, which is not just the title of the book, but the title of the last story. This last one was a bit strange. It's about a guy, again, unnamed narrator, which, again, these could all be Haruki Murakami. As the last one was Haruki Murakami, they could all be Haruki Murakami. But this one's about a guy he's not much of a suit guy. Yeah. He likes his sweatpants. I got a Mr. Rogers vibe, actually.
I could identify with this man.
Yeah, he seemed like an alright guy. But he decided, you know what, I'm going to dress up just for myself.
Because every once in a while, he just gets the kicks. He just, you get the itch, I just want to... I want to feel the silk on my skin.
Yeah, I want to jazz it up. So he puts on one of his finest suits. I don't know.
Which still isn't a good suit.
Not that good. It's British, not even Italian. But he puts the suit on, and now I was kind of zoning out by this point because I didn't find this story all that interesting. He
was going for a walk.
Yeah, well, even before that, he was having feelings of guilt about wearing this suit.
Yeah, because he waits for his wife and one of her friends were going to eat Chinese,
and he can't eat it because he's allergic.
So whenever they are gonna be away doing that or anything for any period of time, that's when he does wear the suit.
And so he's feeling these weird guilt things. It's like a theme throughout this story, but I didn't really absorb the information enough to care. Unless you had something to add, it doesn't seem all that important. But what it mainly comes down to is he goes to a jazz bar, he's reading a book he's not enjoying, and he's drinking a beer or cocktail, I forget. And there's a 50-something-year-old woman there in a dress. She's dressed up, she's, gussied up there. And he sees her, and the bar gets more crowded, and she ends up sitting next to him. And he kind of thinks he knows her, but he doesn't. He's not sure if he ever met her. And then she starts just grilling him about, oh, why are you reading a book in a bar? Almost oh, you think you look cool doing that? What are you doing? And then she starts bashing his suit, oh, and he already, by this point, is kind of uncomfortable in the suit. He's mentioned that, okay, you wear it for an hour, and you got that new, I feel fresh, I got a pep in my step. But then he's okay, I want my fucking pajamas. But she starts harping on his suit, and she's pretty much just insulting him, just being very rude. And he just wants to leave. He's this sucks.
Which eventually he does.
Yeah, he ends up finally mustering up the courage to just get up and just leave. But he asked her, are we acquaintances? Do I know you? Are we acquainted? I think is the phrase he used. And then she's acquainted. And then she's harping on him more. And long story short, this will probably be our shortest episode, actually. It turns out that because there's a part where he sees himself in the mirror, and because he's wearing this suit, he feels he's not looking at himself. So there's this weird parallel imaging going on where it's not like it's him, even though it's him. He doesn't feel like it's him. So she starts telling him about he hurt this woman, doesn't say how, emotionally, physically, you don't know, on a shore 3 years ago. And I guess she's this woman's his best friend. So that woman was very upset with him. And then this woman who's confronting him is still very upset about what happened. And he has no idea. He's what are you talking about? I don't get it. So he just gets mad and he leaves. And then when she's still blah, blah, blah. He leaves. And then I think he's just walking home, and he's just trying to think what the hell? He wants to be angry, but he's just so confused. He can't remember hurting anybody on the shore or anything like that. Is that how that story ended?
I think, this was one of the shortest stories in the collection as well.
I wasn't able to really... it was. It kind of ends abruptly, I think. Yeah, it was just pretty much ended abruptly. So there wasn't much to that. You didn't find any information. That was almost like a flash fiction piece the way it read. There wasn't a beginning, middle, or end. It was just kind of started at the middle and stayed there. Because, as the reader, you want to know... Honestly, in all these stories, I kind of want to know more about the narrator, who they are, but it's written in a way that you're not supposed to. But this story specifically, you don't know anything about this guy, so it could be very possible that he did something bad. And,
Yeah.
why he didn't remember, who knows? Maybe he was drunk. Also, he never finished his book. He was on the last 2 pages.
Yeah,
and he just said he's never going to finish it. It seems like something you would just gloss over, but there was a big point made about he always finishes books, no matter whether he likes them or not. He always finishes books, and he was on the last 2 pages when this woman confronted him, and then he just, like, he ends with, you know what, I'm never going to finish the book.
Yeah, like put him in such a sour mood that he wouldn't finish those last 2 or 3 pages.
Yeah, so that was bizarre, and that just kind of makes you think, like, is that supposed to be more of... Like, I feel like there's deeper meaning in this story than I was able to take away. Maybe that just has something to do with English translation or something, but now that we're done with first-person singular stories by Haruki Murakami, what is your rating? I gave it 3 stars out of 5.
3 out of 5?
3 whiskey shots.
That seems about right, yeah.
But that's coming from me, who's a Murakami fan. Like, with you and Stephen King, you might give a little more leeway than you normally would. If I read this without knowing, like, if it wasn't Haruki Murakami, someone else wrote this, someone I never heard of, and I read it, I probably would have gave it 2, or maybe not even finished it.
What about if it was just, like sometimes indie authors send us their books to check out. What about if it was just from some indie author that you didn't, There's
a good chance I wouldn't have finished it. Because, the main thing, to be frank, the reason why, it's an easy read for one. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to bail on something that's easy read. But because I know Haruki Murakami and his work so well by now, I had the expectation and the hope.
You were waiting for that other shoe to drop.
Yeah, that things were going to get weird. And then when we read the monkey story, I was like, okay, it's got to get weird. It didn't. It actually dropped back down. The monkey story was the highlight of weirdness, and it wasn't even that weird.
Yeah.
Fun fact, because Haruki Murakami is a huge fan of Franz Kafka, because I told you about that Metamorphosis story he did. It was like the bug turns into Gregor Samsa, which I loved, by the way. It's one of my favorite stories. This is actually based, from my understanding, off a Franz Kafka story dealing with some kind of talking monkey. I never heard of that one, and I read like the Kafka collection I got from Barnes & Noble, like Metamorphoses and other stories, but I don't remember, that wasn't in there. I don't know if that was a more well-known one or just like, something we didn't get in English. I'm not sure. So what's your overall takeaways of first person singular?
What I liked about it was the style of writing, because even though that a lot of the subject matters of a lot of the stories, I still kind of felt engaged by the way he wrote them, and as I've said in different episodes, like I do like on like how he focuses on different things and then stuff like that. So like I don't know how much that translates to his other work or to even like his longer works.
That's a common Murakami trope, is like that focus on detail. More so in like his novels and stuff than the actual short story collections I've read of his, because he seems like a guy who, when he writes short stories, does it like either I think he seems like he wraps them up too fast, or maybe he just doesn't have, because even in his novels, it's kind of hard to pinpoint just like a beginning, middle, and end, like 3-act play there. He kind of goes and just lets his writing wander, so I could see how that would be problematic in a short story form. Like I said, I read one of his other collections that was pretty good, but it was weird. But that does bring me to my next point, unless you wanted to finish that.
Well, I was also going to say that I think that this might actually be a good book to try to introduce people to Murakami, because I just, like, if I'm trying to get somebody into Stephen King, I just wouldn't drop them into, like,
the heavy waters,
the
deep waters.
You know what I mean, to like the Dark Towers, or not even like The Stand. I wouldn't, like, I'd be like, it's awesome, but don't start with it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, like
Murakami, I wouldn't say somebody should just jump into 1Q84. Like, you're gonna be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Or the Wind Up Bird Chronicles. Even you're gonna be all over the place. It's pretty wild.
So I think, like, if anybody who is interested in his work, this would be a good thing to check out. And to see, like, if it may be something that you could see, knowing that, okay, this isn't exactly his work, but it gives you a feel or a taste on what it might be or where it could go.
I would say this was Murakami light.
Yeah.
It's, you get, like you said, you get a taste of it, but it's not real heavy-handed, because Murakami can be a little too much when you get into, like, a 500 to 800 page book of his, and then you have these, like, his specific way of writing. keeps going. Like that one Q84, my biggest complaint about that book is because in Japan it was 3 books. It did the whole like comic book, like when you get trades of comic books, a lot of times they reiterate at the beginning of the next one, which you already did. He was doing that in the novels. So you kept getting the same granted, he would kind of tell it in a different way, but you keep getting the same information. Now, that was one of those books where you could get very lost if you didn't have...
it might help giving you that information again.
Yeah. Well, not if you read it all at once like I did. If it was in 3 separate books, having that reiteration would help you, but that's what Dracula suffered from. Remember when we read Dracula, they kept repeating the same things, and it's like, all right, I got it. They got the fucking guns. Let's move on. You do get that with some of Murakami stuff, but that could also just be because how they publish it in Japan versus here. We always put everything in one big book. We don't like to have multiple books for something that's not technically a series. Like, because in Japan it seems more popular, not necessarily more popular, but more popular than here to have one story stretch out into multiple books versus here we do series. So it's like you got to wrap up the story arc. You can have like a cliffhanger, but like the main piece, like the main story you're working on, it's gonna transition in the second book to something else.
Yeah, and that's the second.
But in the Murakami book, like it's literally just
very more sterilized. You would think maybe they would do it over like you.
Yeah.
Do you think like over in Japan, like how back in the day over here, serial fiction was pretty popular. That was the thing. Like,
I think it's still more popular over there than because we kind of got away from that. Because even comic books, they try to wrap things up. Like, they have the monthly comics, but I feel like most people just wait for the trades anymore. Yeah. But we are going to continue because, using the water metaphor, you're in the shallow ends with this first-person singular. We're going to go a little deeper. Yeah. Got another short story collection. I'm very excited because I have not read this one. I actually forgot about it, and I wanted to check it out. Is The Elephant Vanishes. I'll read the synopsis here for anybody that wants to follow along. I figure... We're actually a week ahead with these episodes, so I don't know. We could at least take a week off, but we don't have to necessarily get right back to it. We'll see where we are in our personal reading and stuff. But because these ones they seem a little longer, like the print's a little smaller and stuff, so it might take a little longer to get through the stories. But we'll see how it goes.
Did you see also in the back of that they had an ad for another large print book? I don't know if it's another short story.
That book, without being in large print, is like 1,000 pages, so I don't want a large print book version of that. Because I was looking online, I think it's like 800, The Killing Commodore, because I wanted to get that like a year or two ago when it came out, but it just looked really big, and I was like, I can't read another huge Murakami book. I'm going to read 5 smaller ones first. But the synopsis for this elephant vanishes, or at least this is what's on the back of the book. In the tales that make up The Elephant Vanishes, the imaginative genius that has made Murakami an international superstar is on full display. In these stories, a man sees his favorite elephant vanish into thin air. A newlywed couple suffers attacks of hunger that drive them to hold up a McDonald's in the middle of the night. And a young woman discovers that she has become irresistible to a little green monster who burrows up through her backyard. By turns haunting and hilarious, in The Elephant Vanishes, Murakami crosses the border between separate realities and comes back bearing remarkable treasures. Another thing that you didn't get to really see in this collection, this first-person singular, Murakami is pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna.
I could see that as just with the monkey, like even like that story is hilarious, but not even having a funny
without
having like a funny line, like that whole thing is just hilarious.
And just Japanese humor in general is very different from like American humor or even just like Western humor, because like modern Japanese humor kind of gets influences from like British humor and different things, but we always see like the TV shows how wacky and zany everything is, but just what they find funny is it always interests me, and Murakami usually catches it pretty good. Like he'll talk about like some because he'll throw it in a way you won't expect. So you'll have a story. And he'll just say something like, then she caressed my balls. But it's just like, why did you use the word balls right there? I don't know why, but it just always cracks me up because he does that. Or like, she just cradled my package and then she just tongued my balls. I'm like, why do you gotta say it like that? It'd be like a romantic sex scene.
Well, I mean, then too, if the stories that I thought were kind of funny was the dude who slept with the chick that he used to work with. Yeah, that whole shit was hilarious. Like, hey, just so you know, I'm gonna scream another guy's name.
Like, what?
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like it's not necessarily a dry humor. It's just when you're looking at it as an outside observer, you're like, that's a really weird situation to be in. But you can see it as it's like even the monkey situation. that would never happen. But when you're reading it, you're like, that seems like that's how that would happen if it was real.
It was like the guy who went to see his girlfriend, but ended up talking to her brother,
A weird brother,
for a very long time, and then doesn't end up talking to him for like another 20 years. Like that's like that weird humor.
That's where the Franz.
That's like life humor.
That's where the Kafka inspiration seems to come in, because Kafka, he was a little more hardcore because he was I think he was German, but he had like that weird awkwardness that we all go through times 11. So, Gregor Samson turned into a bug, and his family's just pissed off that he's not working. Like, they're mad because now they have to get jobs because he can't support them anymore. Like, that's the thing they're worried about, not the giant bug monster. Yeah. They're like, oh, this fucking guy, and they, lock him in a room.
But to give people, like, a more modern thing, and, and it's just because it's always on TV now. But it's it's what made The Office famous.
Yeah.
Is, like, those small... actual people moments that that happen to everybody, but you wouldn't think would be hilarious, but they end up being hilarious.
Yeah, but it's because you could see yourself in that situation. You could see how that would happen,
and because you're not in that situation, you're seeing it happen to other people, and you're just like, oh, thank God, because if I it's like if I'm oh God, I'm just happy I wouldn't be Michael Scott in that scenario. Like, I don't know what I would do.
It's like when you're in a grocery store or a busy place and you see somebody wave across the room and it looks like they're looking at you, but you don't wave, because that's the worst when you do the wave and you're like, what? But then you look and you see someone else wave, and then the person runs up and it's not for them. They were the one that almost was you. Yeah. Like, they're the one to fucking wave back and like, what is going on? Who's this person? Like, oh shit. Like, so when you see that from the outside, it's hilarious. You're like, oh man, that's cringy. That hurts. I'm so glad that didn't happen to me. I'm glad I didn't wave at that hot chick, and then it turns out she was waving at her fucking uncle or somebody behind me.
Her other hot friend.
Ooh, but I did have a moment like that last week. I was delivering to one of my stops. This fucking big fat guy that works at it was like a trucking place. He's leaning over a truck, and he's looking right at me. And usually he's pretty talkative when I go there. So he says something when I'm bringing the delivery in, and I was like, oh, okay, like whatever you want. And he's like, oh, I'm on the phone. He had one of those Bluetooth things. I was like, oh, you fuck.
I get that all the time at work. I'll just be walking around and somebody would just be saying something like customers or other employees. And I'm like, oh, what? And then and
they look at you like you're an asshole. Like, you're the one who's used,
I can't see that in your ear.
Yeah, because they're small now. They usually be the big ones, but now they're smaller. They can just be like an iPod or, the fucking AirPod.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, I'm looking forward to The Elephant Vanishes, because I like me some Murakami.
I like this cover.
Yeah, it's pretty funky. All those covers that he has, the English versions, are pretty funky. Even though I can't read it, I would like to get his books all in Japan, too. Like Japanese.
That could be interesting.
I showed you that Norwegian wood copy I have in Japanese. It's so small.
I'd say, is it expensive? Because you might get it shipped from over there?
It just depends. I think that Norwegian wood, I don't think it was expensive, but it took a while to get here. Well, that's about all. I hope you folks enjoyed that. That has been a Murakami Minute, presented by the Drunken Pen Writing Podcast.